The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this episode are that of the guest and host and do not necessarily reflect the values of sponsors or other associated organizations. Welcome to the Parental Compass, presented by Family Education and Support Services. I am your host, Bobby Williams. We're glad to have you here. As always, you can look us up on Apple or Spotify. Hit subscribe. We're dropping a new episode every week. You can also go to parentalcompass.org. I want to thank Molina Healthcare for sponsoring this episode through their Molina Cares program, building stronger communities one life at a time. We're glad to have you on the team. For most people, the longest relationship you'll ever have in your life is with your sibling. It can also be one of the most difficult relationships you'll ever have. Here to speak with me today is a woman who has dedicated her life to promoting positive sibling relationships, Lynn Price. Lynn created an organization called Camp to Belong. They have camps across the United States and in Australia, and their mission is to reunite foster youth with their siblings, give them a chance to connect, a chance to build some memories together. They also do some amazing advocacy work. Lynn grew up in foster care herself and has really just thought a lot about this issue. So I really appreciated her perspective. Let's check it out. I want to get just to the basics here. Why are sibling relationships important?
So siblings are so important because in reality, they are your longest relationships in life for the most part. They surpass the parent-child relationship. And while you may grow up and go through a series of events and occasions and sibling rivalry and sibling connection, it's when you're older in life that you recollect all of that. You share that between the families that you form, and then you take care of each other in older age.
Yeah. Well, conflict can come up easily between siblings. So, what can you do to foster a stronger bond or make sure the family is connected as children are growing up?
Well, being siblings and having conflict is about the safest place you can do it because it is unconditional love. You know that sibling, no matter how mad you are, how mean you are, how disrespectful you might be, how you might point the fingers or blame or argue or tease, that sibling is just going to the other room. You're going to see them at the dining table that night. You're going to see them at the Christmas party or Hanukkah party. And so there's something safe about that environment of conflict and the way to have social interaction. So that is a time to let it all out, own it, maybe say sorry for it, but then know that's a part of learning interaction with other people in your life.
Yeah, that's a good point that it's not just like a regular friendship or something. Are there ways parents can develop that bond though?
Well, I think, it does start with everyday kind of rituals where you give siblings the opportunity to be together, to have chores, to go to each other's hobbies and passions so they understand where the other one comes from. Maybe it's having dinner together. These days, it's hard to when kids have different activities that they do. But to sit down and even talk at the dinner table at night about what was the best thing about your day and what was the hardest thing about your day, because that's how they learn about each other.
You mentioned sibling rivalry, and that seems like such a huge issue. What can you do when sibling rivalry comes up, or how can you help prevent it?
Well, I think you don't prevent sibling rivalry. Again, sibling rivalry is a safe place to test out your temper, to test out your decision making, to test out what you really speak to and what you listen to, what upsets people, what honors people, what excites people. So doing it with a sibling is the best place, with parents maybe giving the footnotes of, hear your sibling out. You're not the same as your sibling. You have a different perspective than your sibling. You have different friends. You are in different grades at school. You're in different activities. So not to prevent it, but to process whatever that rivalry is about.
It's like your first lesson in dealing with other people in the world.
Absolutely.
It makes me think about, what about playing favorites? Because you might feel yourself naturally identifying with one child more. Is there a way to check your biases somehow?
Oh, goodness. My children are all grown up, and sometimes I'll be talking about one, and somebody will say, that one's your favorite, right?
Uh huh.
And I have to really be careful not to say, no, of course not. At that moment, he may be. And
Yeah.
maybe that's kind of the mindset to have. Your kids are going to have moments that they absolutely do something that you cheer on, or know it is your biggest challenge. And sometimes at that moment, you know what, they are your favorite because they did something that you're applauding them on, that you're celebrating with, that you're sharing with the other kids as role modeling. But know that you got to equalize that across the kids as well, and use all of it as learning and role modeling.
Yeah. Is there merit to letting children deal with conflicts themselves, or when is the time to jump in? That seems like another delicate balance.
Yes. Well, we have found the time to jump in is when it looks like it's getting verbally or physically uncomfortable, unbearable, or even violent. That's the way, that old saying about words hurt you. Obviously, physical tension or physical touch can hurt you in a conflict. So that's when the parents step in. What we've really learned, though, is sometimes the reprimanding or the explaining doesn't happen best at the time of conflict,
Hmm.
because your children are already not listening to you. They're already going to finish your sentences. They're already going to defend themselves. They're already going to point fingers. So sometimes just saying, let's all breathe, let's all take a little break. And later on, whether independently with each child or together, go back to what happened and how did it happen, and talk it out that way, process it.
That's an interesting point, because you think about when you're really angry and heated, your brain is working differently in that moment, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. I think about children and I think that empathy isn't something they naturally come with. Empathy is almost a skill you have to develop in a way. So, how can you build more empathy in children?
That's such a great question. Empathy is, in some ways, it's picked up on. In some ways, it has to be pointed out.
Yeah.
Empathy is that old saying about put yourself in that other person's shoes, because nobody really thinks like we do, and nobody really knows what they don't know. And so having your kids be in different environments with different kids and different cultures and different lifestyles, learning that everybody's views are okay in the lives that they live. And then have that empathy, because sometimes you may do something one way, somebody else might do something another way, but then you learn about the options for your own self. And to have empathy for other people who may not have what you have isn't a bad thing. It's just a different thing. And so learning about that will allow you to be that much more comfortable and understanding and relatable to other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Exposure seems so important, because when you're growing up as a child, you almost think that the way your family is how the whole world is, because you spend so
Right?
much time in your home. So, yeah, getting them to understand that seems big.
Yeah, exposure is a good word. Exposure and awareness. Yes.
How do you think what you learn in your sibling relationships translates into your relationships as adults?
Well, we talk about a sibling relationship actually in stages. So if you think about it, when you're born, you're, coddled and cooed over, and your sibling comes up, and usually there's a big smile and a big giggle, and, they're just playing with you because they like you at that point in time. And then you grow into a toddler stage, and there's some play between siblings, but there's also this, that's mine. Don't do that. He's making noise. He's making messes. She's making, it uncomfortable for me. And it begins with this love, not so love relationship, and this taking care of, but not really wanting to take care of relationship. That moves into elementary school years, where now a sibling is leaving the home to go play with other kids, and there's a loss, a void of that sibling being around or having different opportunities than you have. You move towards high school, and now there's different passions, and there's boyfriends, and there's girlfriends, and there's jealousy, and there's, you really don't like me anymore, and why aren't you spending time with me, or stay out of my way. There's just so much friction. But then all of a sudden you become adults, and you start your own families, and you're creating not only new traditions, but you're experiencing the traditions you did as siblings with your family. And then when you're older and your kids move on, oftentimes older siblings live together. They take care of each other. They help bury their parents. They help in having fun graduations and other marriages and all. So there's a continuum of experiences shared together.
Yeah. What about your relationships with other people? Do you think what you learn as a sibling translates to other relationships?
Oh, oftentimes you hear about, like in college, fraternities and sororities, sisters and brotherhoods, or you think about other organizations that you join that are about, the sisterhood, the kindred spirit, or the brohood, and the brothers that hang out together. And I think that variable that is in your back of your mind is friends versus siblings, and how much is that boundary of discussion, personal versus professional, versus private, and what are the boundaries of what you should say and you shouldn't say. And you learn that through the secrets you have with your siblings that you won't share with your friends.
Yeah. What role do you think birth order plays in the whole situation of siblings?
It's a birth order is something that I don't think people spend a lot of time talking about. You hear the middle child syndrome, and you hear about the older sibling maybe being more of a parent or expected to be a role model. And you expect that everybody dotes over the baby or the younger sibling. The reality is, at any age, the siblings learn from each other. And yes, they are at different stages for countless reasons in their lives, but they still have a ebb and flow of what their place is in that family. And parents can work really and passion really to bring them together as who's the role model of the day, who has the best example of something today, who wants to share the best thing about today, as I said before. So it kind of equalizes where they are. I know I will speak to foster care. Oftentimes, when youth in foster care go into a new home, or even when youth are adopted and go into a new home, they may have been the oldest or the middle or the youngest in their birth family. And now all of a sudden that order changes into their new foster adoptive family. That's an important conversation to have because there are different thoughts or expectations or traditions around that.
Mhm. What else do you think society gets wrong about siblings?
Well, I think, a lot of times you'll hear people say, oh, siblings, I wish that sibling wasn't here, or to the point of what we talked about earlier, the favorite one,
Uh-huh.
or somebody's more jealous of the other. There's comparisons. And the truth is, siblings are individuals, but they also honor, they respect, they learn from each other. And I think if it comes down to that connection, that as individuals rather than connection as siblings, there'd be a better understanding of they can be different. They can have different passions, different likes, different skills, different talents, different interests. And that's the most important thing to know about each one of them.
We're all our own individual people.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you think it's important siblings are friends at the end of the day at any stage in life?
I think friends is important for siblings because, again, there's that trust factor. We talked about siblings, they fight, they argue, they tease. However, usually they're the first one to run to each other's side, to stand up for each other, to look out for each other. And there's a friendship at the very, very core of being relatives or being siblings, where you have like a common, almost natural concern about the other. And to be that friend opens the door to that safe conversation that we talked about and that safe support that we talked about, but also keeps it secret and private when it needs to.
Hmm. Well, Lynn, you're doing amazing work, and it's been great to see it firsthand and to talk with you today. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything you want to share with our audience?
Well, thank you for asking. Siblings, like I said, are the longest relationships in life. I do want to speak back to foster care or adoption. So oftentimes, particularly in the foster care journey, siblings see each other only at supervised visits, maybe an hour a week or even an hour a month. And so it's so important in those times to have exciting opportunities for them to make memories, to celebrate each other's birthdays, to have them celebrate holidays, for them to learn about each other's passions, attend each other's graduations, whatever it is, so that when they journey out of the foster care system, they have those childhood memories and those milestones to take with them into the rest of their lives, because they will leave foster care. And in adoption, nowadays, kids are looking for their families and for their siblings. And to have those memories along the way, mandated visits and being placed together in homes, is really, really critical and important information to look at. I always say to people, go after I've spoken somewhere, call your sibling or write them a letter. Let them know that you care, because they are in your life for the long run, and those moments will count later on.
What's your website where people can learn more about your work?
camptobelong.org. And we have member camps all around the country and in Australia, where we do summer camp programs. And we do year-round what we call sibling preservation programs, so that we can have more connection between siblings. We can create and help legislation regarding sibling placement and legislation. We can recruit more families to foster and adopt siblings, and truly, truly give them a great outlook on their lives individually and as siblings.
It's powerful work. Thank you for coming on today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you a lot, and thanks for your audience.
Thank you, Lynn. What I appreciate about Lynn is she could have been just bitter about her foster care experience, and she would have been totally justified in that. But what she did was she took that experience and used it to create this amazing organization that has helped thousands of people who are just like her. So we appreciate you, Lynn. Thank you to Family Education and Support Services and Melina Cares. My name is Bobby Williams. We'll see you next week on the Parental Compass. Peace.